everyone, I'm Andrea and you're watching a V²M production. Veteran Voices magazine is a print and online magazine covering veteran stories and content. We use this space to sit down with veterans to have conversations about service, life after the uniform, and the paths they carve out along the way. Today we are interviewing with Coast Guard veteran Karen Brooks. Hi Karen, I'm really glad you're here today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
One of the things I love about these conversations is that we're not about just resumes or titles. They're really about the person behind them, and you wear a lot of hats. You're a veteran, a business owner, 3 times a business owner, a wife and a mom. Today is just a chance to talk through the journey that connects all of that in your own words. There's no rush and no wrong answers. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Let's start at the beginning. When you joined the Coast Guard, did you have a clear picture of where that decision would eventually lead you, or did things unfold in ways that you didn't expect? Was it always your plan to join the Coast Guard, and why the Coast Guard?
So I'm going to say that's a big no. It did unfold and was not my intention. As a matter of fact, when I joined the Coast Guard, I'd never heard of the Coast Guard.
Wow.
If you're from this area, you know, maybe Smith Mountain Lake is our largest body of water, so I thought maybe I'd be on the lake. So no, I never heard of the Coast Guard, and when I joined the Coast Guard, it just, back then, you could re-enlist for 1 year at a time.
Oh.
And I did that 6 years in a row because I couldn't commit. But after that, I was all in.
Okay. And how many years?
26.
26 years. Amazing. So when you went to boot camp, you were telling me this story. Your team, what was it that you said? Company was just all women.
Yeah.
And I remember you telling me that that was the first time and the last time that they did that. So tell me about that, where it was, and you know, I can't imagine the stories that came out of that.
Yeah, I think that's a different. The funny stories are maybe a different show, but
right.
So I will say
it could be a whole show, right?
It would be a whole show. So in 1979, when I joined the Coast Guard was 37,000 strong and only 1,200 women. So I was one of 1,200 women.
Oh my goodness.
So you think about that, and they just didn't know what to do with women. Right. And I understood that, believe it or not. I understood even as a teenager when I joined that I was coming into a men's world and they didn't know what to do with us. So we were an all-female company in Cape May, New Jersey, and it was very interesting going through because, you know, we were learning and they were learning too. And so the mix though of marching alongside men, or just some of the innovative ways that women came up to learn to do things in boot camp was interesting.
I bet, yeah. I bet. Now, were they women that were the leaders at the boot camp with you, or were they men that were the ones in charge?
They had one company commander who was in charge of a company. She was a reservist. So,
okay.
So all the rest of company commanders were men. Okay. Our company commander I remember he was 6'7". He was a big guy. And back then, you know, all of our uniforms were polyester and they zipped up the back. And he would try to give us sit-ups instead of push-ups, thinking that that was helping, when really it was just creating scars in our back from these zippers and the little thing. And we were like, please don't do that. So yeah, they were to try to make us equal in what what we were to learn and what we were to do. And for the most part, that's the way it was. But we are all inherently different, all of us. So.
That's an incredible story for sure. Would you consider yourself an introvert or an extrovert, and how has that helped shape the way you lead, serve clients, or show up in your business?
It's a great question. I am for sure an introvert. I think a lot of people in the military have a lot of similar characteristics, and I would say that am not quite as an extreme introvert as I used to be. We all soften a little bit in age, but I'm an introvert. And how it shows up in my business, particularly as a realtor, is I understand where I get my energy, and I understand some boundaries now. So it's helped me when I'm dealing with people. Sometimes in a couple, maybe there's one who's an extreme extrovert, and I understand that I need to limit my time a little bit with you, right? Because I'm going to be on the side of the road. I can't take it. But I have learned just the value of both. And as an introvert, I have to carve out those quiet times for myself. It gives me the energy, and then I'm able to serve better. But for a long time, I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. That's very true. And I think, like you said, as we get older, we kind of learn a lot more about ourselves. I'm sure being an introvert in the Coast Guard was helpful to kind of stay in line, would you say?
I would say, but I think that back then, I got the impression that people either thought when you were a woman, again, for me, everything came down to value. I found that in boot camp, what I took away from that is there were 42 women from all across the country, from everywhere, every upbringing you could imagine, me from little Lynchburg, Virginia. So we were a diverse group, but we could work together for the same goal. So being an introvert, I did find that even though there were some misconceptions about it, whether you were friendly, hey, I can't tell you how many men would come by and go, smile, and I'd be like, oh my. This is harder than tying the knot or doing whatever.
Right.
So there are times, yes, I found that just being quiet and not, but yet again, we're all weaved with different things. So even though I'm an introvert, I'm confident in my value, and sometimes I want to share that opinion when I really should just be quiet. The introvert didn't help me out there.
Right. So you run multiple businesses that all center around home, safety, and stability. Was that intentional, or did you realize later that there was this common thread pulling those choices together?
Another great question. I do think they do, that is a common thread. I also think, again, the common thread is value. So I was in the Coast Guard for 10 years on active duty before I ever served with another woman.
Oh my goodness.
So that was different.
Yes.
But when I did serve with women, what I found out, unfortunately, is that sometimes women are our worst enemy to each other.
Yes.
When I got out of the Coast Guard, when I became a realtor, so I went from an environment to where I would do everything I could, give my life for you if I had to in the military, right? That's what we're going to serve each other.
Yes.
To an industry of, I might stab you in the back if I could get this. So the difference was the value, the safety, yes. I'm a huge advocate for being your own advocate for things that you want in life, and also for being safe. So you're right. I think the home thing, right? That's, for a lot of people, that's the biggest value that we have, is owning a home. So buying it or selling it, you want a trusted advisor, and you want someone who's going to make that safe decision for you. So you're right. Yeah. They came about. I think we're all a product of our habits and experience. I try to be a little open. That sounds a little rigid, but I do sometimes lean heavily on what I've experienced.
Sure. But yet you still are empowering women with the damsels in defense,
right?
And really helping them to stand on their own. Which I'm sure you learned in the Coast Guard as a woman.
Yes, that's true. That is true, because I was on my own. Believe me, more than I ever thought that would be like that. I don't know why that never entered my mind, is that I was going to join an organization where I wouldn't be stationed with any other women. But in Damsel, just the seeing a woman who has received education about safety, how to make that plan, and been empowered and equipped. And just seeing her, she's a new woman.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
So what kind of reward is that?
That's beautiful, yes. So military service teaches adaptability, whether you want it to or not sometimes, right? What's something you learned during your service that you still lean on today in your day-to-day life?
Again, I think I do still come back to value. That's a big thing. That's what people want to be recognized for. I lean on that heavily, because in the Coast Guard, there were times, unfortunately, the truth is I served with the best and the worst. So for me, I had to, one, align my expectations, and I had to lean on the fact that I determined my value, not you. Whether or not women, when I joined, women couldn't go to sea. There was no berthing available on Coast Guard ships, right? Right? You can't just put a woman on a ship.
Right.
That probably wouldn't get a good idea.
Right.
So I remember a time, I had been in the Coast Guard about 12 or 13 years. And I was in North Carolina, and I was a chief petty officer, and I was the only chief petty officer. So again, there's no fraternization. So I couldn't go out and socialize with these women. But for the most part, by that time, men were, they accepted you. Not that they valued you, but they accepted you. And I'll never forget, I was given a class, and there was probably 15 of my people who worked for me in that class. And a male walked in the office, and now there was a sign on the door that said training in progress, but he walked in anyway, it was administration. And I'll never forget, he just said to me, hey chief, what are you doing, telling sea stories? Knowing that women, that hadn't been to sea. And I remember in that moment, the words just came out. I said, no chief, I'm teaching a leadership class, do you want to take a seat? Right. So, but the women that were there that worked for me, I can see them sit up a little bit.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because that's not, your value didn't come from sea duty. Your value came to what I bring to the table.
Right.
And we all bring something.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sorry,
No, that's incredible. That's a beautiful story of, I think sometimes people forget how hard women had to fight for a position and place in the military. Even if you were allowed to be in it, they still made it incredibly difficult, especially in the beginning of that. Especially when you're looking at 1,200 women in the entire military service for a Coast Guard. So that's a great story. If you could go back and talk to the version of yourself just starting out at 17 you said 17, you joined, yes, whether in the military or a business, what's something you'd want her to know that would have made the road a little bit steadier?
I'd probably pick business only because, again, as a teenager, I don't know. You just had to learn from experience. But in business, I wish that I had leaned on what helped me significantly in the military, and that was choosing a mentor. I'm a huge advocate for mentorship, and it doesn't have to be for your life or your career. It could be for one thing.
Sure.
Right? I just want to start this business. I just want to know how to get along with this person or whatever.
Sure.
And so in business, when I became a realtor because in the military, right, when the government says you got to go, you got to go.
Yes.
So I had to sell my house. You had to sell your house. So during short windows, a realtor was very important to me. So that's how I felt such a calling to continue to serve. But I didn't really think of needing a mentor.
Yes.
And I wish I'd looked back and said to her, you know better.
Right,
Get a good mentor. You'll save yourself a lot of headache.
Right.
So that's good question again.
Yeah, that's great advice at any age.
Exactly.
There's always somebody else who knows a little bit more that we can learn from.
Yes.
And that helps us to get through. So I love this perspective that you've given us. Thank you so much for sharing. Before we wrap up, is there anything we didn't ask that you'd like to share, or something you feel is important for people to understand about the journey of where you are now and where you were then?
I think the most important thing that I would like to share, because certainly it's a different world now than it was when I joined, but people are the same. And I do think that if you will reach out, there's a part in the movie Bambi, there's this old stud and this little Bambi, and they look across the pond at each other thinking, they won't want to listen to me. And I found that in business or in the military, whether it's mentorship or whatever, but reach out to someone who's walked that path before you, right? Because they want to hear from you too.
Yes.
Right? We want to hear from you too. Please help me with my iPhone,
Right.
But listen to them, because they did walk that path. They made that path easier to walk.
Yes.
Right? So that would be my advice to young people joining the military.
Yeah, that is key, incredibly important, especially in this day and age, that we not only respect those that have done the things before us, but that we learn from their mistakes so that we can do better and grow. So thank you for trusting us with your story. Thank you again for your service and your honesty and taking the time to sit down with us. We are incredibly grateful to have your voice as part of the V²M magazine. So
Thank you. Thank you for everything that you do to honor veterans. It's
Thank you.
appreciated.
Thank you.